If evolution had a sense of humor, sloths might be the punchline. Imagine a mammal that moves so slowly algae grows on its back. A creature that climbs trees not to escape predators, but because the ground is simply too risky. In a world that rewards speed, sharp senses, and fast reflexes, the sloth has chosen the opposite path, a path of slowness, stealth, and stillness. And somehow, it works. Sloths are not lazy. They're not helpless. They are not failures of evolution. In fact, they are some of nature's most optimized animals for exactly what they do. What they lack in speed, they make up for in biological ingenuity. Their bodies are laboratories of bizarre adaptations, upside-down digestion, slow-motion reflexes, and even built-in greenhouses of symbiotic life. So how does an animal that takes a week to digest a leaf survive in a rainforest filled with jaguars, eagles, and snakes? Why does its fur grow in reverse? And what can a sloth teach us about a completely different way to live, move, and thrive on Earth? Compared to cheetahs, they're practically statues. Compared to monkeys, they barely exist. But that's the beauty of the sloth. It doesn't try to win the race. It just survives by never needing to run at all. Anatomy and sensory systems. Sloths are built upside down, literally. Their entire anatomy is designed for hanging from tree branches, not walking on the ground. Their curved claws, some longer than human fingers, lock around branches like natural climbing hooks. Their muscles are arranged to support their weight while suspended, not for strength or speed. In fact, sloths have 30% less muscle mass than other mammals their size. But it's not just the muscles. Their internal organs are repositioned to fit their upside-down lifestyle. Their liver, stomach, and kidneys are attached to their ribs with fibrous tissues, preventing them from crushing their lungs while hanging. No other mammal has this exact internal setup. Their fur is also unique. Most mammals have fur that parts downward, but in sloths, the fur grows upward from their belly towards their back. This strange reversal creates a gutter system that channels rain off their bodies while they hang in rainforests of Central and South America. And then there's algae. Yes, algae. Sloth fur houses entire ecosystems of green algae, fungi, and tiny arthropods, including a species of moth that exists nowhere else on Earth. The algae gives the sloth a green tint that helps in camouflage, and in return, the sloth gains nutrients from grooming. It's a moving, breathing ecosystem in slow motion. Their eyesight and hearing are poor, but their sense of smell is excellent, helping them locate food and recognize trees. And while their brains are relatively small, the nerves to their limbs are thickly shielded, providing high resistance to pain and pressure, useful if you're being bitten by a harpy eagle midair. Evolutionary history. Sloths belong to the order Pilosa, which also includes anteaters, but their story begins tens of millions of years ago in South America, when the continent was still isolated from the rest of the world. The earliest sloth ancestors were not small, tree-dwelling creatures, but massive ground giants, some as big as elephants. One of these, Megatherium, stood over 50 foot tall and weighed up to 4 tons. These behemoths roamed ancient grasslands using their claws to strip leaves and fend off predators. But over time, as climates shifted and forests expanded, a new ecological niche opened up in the canopy. Around 20 million years ago, some sloths began adapting to the arboreal lifestyle. Over generations, they became smaller, slower, and more suited for treetop life. Unlike the cats and the primates that developed keen senses and speed, sloths evolved by conserving energy. It was less about what they could do and more about what they didn't need to do. Today, 2 main groups of the sloths survive, the 2-toed sloth and the 3-toed sloth. Though they look similar, they are distant relatives and evolved their tree-hugging lifestyles independently. This is the case of convergent evolution, like how bats and birds both developed wings, but in completely different ways. Their long survival in the forests of Central and South America is proof that slowness, when paired with the right adaptations, is not a flaw, it's a strategy. Neurology and cognition. At first glance, sloths may seem mindless. Their dazed expressions, perpetual smiles, and languid movements give the impression of apathy. But there is a surprisingly subtlety in their neurological wiring. Sloths have one of the slowest metabolic rates of any mammal, and their brain reflects it. They have relatively small brains and a lower than average body temperature of just 30 to 34 degrees Celsius or 86 to 93 degrees Fahrenheit. But size isn't everything. The sloth's brain may be small, but but it's efficient for what it needs to do. Its cerebellum, responsible for coordination of movement, is modest but adapted to a lifestyle that doesn't demand fast reaction times. Their nerve impulses move more slowly than in most mammals, sometimes taking up 4 times longer to process movement. But this isn't a defect, it's a feature. Because they move slowly, sloths rarely attract predators. Sudden movement is what alerts jaguars, harpy eagles, or snakes. By avoiding sudden motion, sloths have become nearly invisible. In fact, their entire nervous system is designed to minimize energy use. With slow conduction, minimal voluntary motion, and passive postures, where a monkey would react in milliseconds, a sloth might take a full second to notice and survive longer by doing nothing. Some studies suggest sloths can remember tree routes, preferred sleeping locations, and even recognize individuals, traits shared with elephants and primates, though in much slower rhythms. Their intelligence lies not in solving puzzles or vocalizations, but in mastering a narrow, specialized survival strategy that hasn't changed in millions of years. Behavior and feeding. Sloths spend 15 to 20 hours a day resting or sleeping. When they move, they climb trees in slow, deliberate motions using all 4 limbs. They only descend to the forest floor about once a week to defecate. Why? That mystery puzzled biologists for decades. Climbing down exposes sloths to their greatest risk, predators, yet they do it regularly. One theory suggests this behavior helps fertilize the base of the trees they rely on. Another proposes it's part of their symbiosis with the moths and the algae on their fur. When sloths poop, the moths lay eggs in the dung, and the larvae return to the sloth's fur as adults. This helps keep the algae ecosystem going and gives the sloth its green camouflage. As for diet, sloths are florivores. They eat leaves, but not just any leaves. Each sloth species has a few preferred trees. Their stomachs are complex, multi-chambered fermentation chambers like a cow's, and digesting just one meal can take up to a week. That slow digestion releases toxins gradually and reduces the need for frequent feeding. Their energy intake is minimal, about 100 to 160 calories a day. For comparison, a hummingbird needs up to 10 times its body weight in food daily. A sloth, it can survive on a handful of leaves and a few sips of water from rain or dew. What they lose in physical dominance, they gain in invisibility. Predators often pass them entirely, unable to detect their scent or presence because of the dense canopy. This passive stealth strategy, paired with their unique gut biology, is what keeps sloths alive in one of the most predator-rich environments. Genetic adaptations. Sloths may seem vulnerable, but their genetics tell a different story. Their DNA shows a long history of slow evolution, adaptive fine-tuning rather than rapid change. Their mitochondrial DNA mutates more slowly than most animals, indicates long lifespans and low metabolic turnover. One of the most astonishing genetic features is their resistance to muscle fatigue. Despite having very little muscle mass, their muscles are highly resistant to lactic acid buildup. This allows them to cling to branches for hours or even days without tiring. It's a trait rarely seen outside migratory birds or elite endurance mammals like camels. Even their claws, which look like simple hooks, are complex keratin structures genetically reinforced for durability and weight distribution. They're like biological carabiners. Some studies also suggest sloths carry specialized microbes in their guts to allow them to digest highly fibrous, toxic, or nutrient-poor leaves that most mammals couldn't survive on. This microbial genome co-evolved with the sloth's own genes in a quiet chemical alliance that enables survival through scarcity. Their genome is like their life strategy, slow, deliberate, and uniquely specialized. They don't adapt fast, but they don't need to. Their strategy is about stability, not versatility. Reproduction and development. Sloths breed slowly, like everything else they do. Mating season varies by region, but once pregnant, a female sloth carries her baby for 11 months. That's longer than many primates. And when the baby is born, it clings to the mother's chest for up to a year. During this time, the mothers teach the infant which trees are edible and how to navigate the canopy. It's not high-speed parenting. It's careful, calm, and consistent. Like the orangutan with its infant or the koala with its joey, sloth motherhood is intimate and prolonged. Sloths generally give birth to one offspring at a time. Twins are almost unheard of. If a baby falls from a tree, the mother will sometimes descend to retrieve it, a rare risk in the sloth world. Other times, the infant learns quickly how to hang on tight. It's a precarious life, but one preferred over eons. Sexual maturity comes late, between 2 and 5 years, depending on species. And because their lives are slow-paced, sloths can live surprisingly long for their size, up to 30 years in the wild and even longer in captivity. The investment is high, but the payoff is survival. One sloth raising one well-protected baby for a few years might seem inefficient, but in an ecosystem where 90% of offspring of other species don't survive to adulthood, it works. Communication and symbiosis. Sloths don't sing like whales or chatter like monkeys, but they do communicate. Baby sloths emit high-pitched squeaks to call their mothers. Adults use subtle hissing or whistling, especially during mating season. They also communicate through scent. Glands on their chests leave chemical messages on trees. But their most profound communication is ecological. Through their fur and feces, sloths sustain tiny ecosystems. The sloth moss, algae, fungi, and bacteria form a network of life supported by the sloth's body. Some of these microbes produce antibiotics. Some break down toxins. Some help regulate the sloth's own body chemistry. This symbiosis isn't just remarkable, it's possibly life-saving. The greenish tint on their fur camouflages them from eagles. The fungi may provide anti-cancer compounds, which researchers are actively studying. In many ways, a sloth is not just one mammal, but a tiny planet of life. Each move it makes echoes through a web of organisms that depend on it. It's an entire world moving at a pace nature rarely rewards, but never punishes. Adaptive strategy and ecological genius. Sloths may seem like outliers, but in reality, they are evolutionary masterpieces of niche adaptation. While most animals compete for speed, aggression, or territory, sloths stepped aside. They found a strategy almost no other mammal has: invisibility through slowness. Their whole design works towards energy conservation. They don't need to migrate, patrol, or hunt. They eat what's near. They move when they must. They reproduce rarely but efficiently. Like the crocodile in its river, the sloth has found a way to live in harmony in its environment, not in conquest of it. Other animals that thrive in their niches, pangolins, koalas, anteaters, show similar narrow specialization, but none have taken it to the sloth's extreme. In a rainforest filled with hyperactive monkeys, high-flying toucans, and prowling jaguars, the sloth's success isn't just unlikely, it's extraordinary. Final reflection. The sloth is not a mistake. It is not slow because it failed to evolve. It is slow because it evolved to be. Every inch of its biology tells a story of a different kind of success, one rooted in quiet, patience, and equilibrium. We live in a world obsessed with speed, productivity, and noise. The sloth reminds us that there is another way, that doing less, moving slower, and blending in can be just as powerful as standing out. In the rustle of the rainforest canopy, far from the predators and the panic, the sloth lives on, silent, steady, and perhaps wiser than we give it credit for. Because sometimes, the smartest thing you can do is nothing at all. That was the biology and the anatomy of the sloths.